The weak may sound exhausted, but no one cares. The strong may whisper softly, but it can penetrate deeply into people's hearts. A blazing talent tree, each leaf carrying a different spiritual pattern. The sect was destroyed, and Lu Yi, who had become a mining slave, became a cultivator and stirred up the turmoil in the 9 provinces. Keywords of the novel. The Great Sage of Humanity without a pop-up window. Download the complete collection of The Great Sage of Humanity TXT, and read the latest chapters of The Great Sage of Humanity. Chapter 1. Miners. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Miners. In the dim and damp mining passage, Lu Yi carried a mining basket on his back and a mining pick in his hand, walking step by step forward. The young man's expression was somewhat melancholic, his eyes focused on the empty space in front of him, as if staring at something. To outsiders, there seemed to be nothing in front of Lu Yi, but in reality, a semi-transparent shadow could be seen in the young man's field of vision. That was like the shadow of a tree, gray and indistinct, with lush branches and leaves that spread from 1/3 of the tree body to the left and right, supporting a semi-circular crown. I have been in this world called Kyushu for over a year now, and Lu Yi still hasn't figured out what it is. He only knows that when his attention is focused enough, this shadow tree has a chance to appear in his field of vision, and others will not notice it at all. What a tragic life, the young man sighed. A year ago, he suddenly woke up in this unfamiliar world. Before he could familiarize himself with the environment, his power was taken over by a group of thieves, many of whom were killed. He and other young men and women became prisoners of that group of thieves and were then sent into this mine vein, becoming a lowly mining slave. Afterwards, he learned from scattered conversations with others that his influence belonged to the Haotian League, a sect called Xiantian sect. The name of this sect may sound cool and domineering, but in reality, it is just an unremarkable small sect. The one who captured the Xiantian sect was the evil Moon Valley under the command of Wanmo Ridge. Haotian Alliance and Wanmo Ridge are 2 major factions in this world, both formed by countless forces of various sizes, fighting against each other with the intention of completely eliminating each other. They are said to have lasted for hundreds of years. In Lu Ye's view, such a struggle is simply a confrontation between the conservative camp and the evil camp, and he was just accidentally caught up in this wave of confrontation. Over the years, wars have been raging in the mainland of Kyushu, and every year small forces like Xiantian sect have been uprooted. However, soon more forces emerged like mushrooms after rain, occupying various territories and making the situation even more chaotic. Let's just be mine slaves. Lu Yi comforted himself, and compared to those who were killed, he was still alive at least. Being able to survive is not because he has any special abilities, but because Evil Moon Valley requires some miscellaneous tasks. For someone like Lu Yi, who has no cultivation and is still young, it is undoubtedly the best choice. In fact, the mining slaves in this mine are not only members of the Xiantian sect, but also disciples of other small families and sections. The strength of Evil Moon Valley is not weak. In recent years, it has captured many territories, and the original forces on these territories have naturally been destroyed. Some of the available manpower has been sent by Evil Moon Valley to various places for enslavement. These people all have one characteristic, which is that they have not yet gained enlightenment and have no cultivation, so they are easy to control. There is a saying in the Kyushu continent that it is difficult for demons to transform without opening their minds, and it is difficult for people to cultivate without opening their minds. To practice, one must open the spiritual opening. Only by opening the spiritual opening can one have the qualification to practice. Opening spiritual orifices is not a simple task. Among ordinary people, those who have undergone systematic training can open spiritual orifices, but around 100%. If they come from a family or sect of cultivation and have guidance from elders, this proportion may be higher. Lu Yi was unable to open her own spiritual orifice, so she could only make a living by mining in this dim mine passage. However, mining slaves are not without a way out. If they can successfully enlighten and find someone in charge to report to, they will have the opportunity to participate in an assessment. If the assessment is successful, they can become disciples of the evil Moon Valley. However, there are very few mining slaves who can open their minds. They work all day in this dim environment and cannot even eat enough. How can they still open their minds? So basically 99% of the mining slaves have already given up their lives, working hard every day just to have a full meal. Lu Yi has no sense of belonging to the Xiantian sect. After all, as soon as he arrived in this world, the Xiantian sect was destroyed, and he doesn't know who those people in the sect are. He also doesn't want to become a disciple of the evil Moon Valley. This is not a legitimate force, and the name alone gives people a sense of evil. Sooner or later it will cool down. But he can't stay here as a mining slave for the rest of his life. What kind of system would that be? At least he is also an elite person in the new era. If he doesn't have dreams, what's the difference between being a person and being a salted fish? So for the past year, he has been working hard to enlighten himself. Originally, he thought that only the shadow tree he could see could provide him with some wonderful help, but even now, this shadow tree is still just a shadow. Not to mention any help, sometimes it can also affect his vision. Lu Yi seriously suspected whether there was something wrong with his eyes. Turning a corner, a faint light appeared in the distance, which was one of the exits of the mine. Today's harvest is good. Hand over the ore in the ore basket, and you should get 3 contributions. It's about 12 o'clock when you count the amount accumulated in the past few days. 2 mantu will be exchanged at 2 o'clock, and the remaining 10 o'clock is just enough to exchange for a life pill. Qi and blood pill is a low-grade pill that is not an auxiliary for opening the body. However, to open the body, one must have sufficient qi and blood. Although qi and blood pill is low-grade, it is suitable for people like Lu Yi who have not yet opened the body. The reason why Evil Moon Valley is willing to take out qi and blood pills is not because of their kindness, but because they deeply understand the way of human heart. This cheapest and lowest level pill can make hopeful people work harder to mine. For example, Lu Yi is very hardworking every day. 30 zhang away from the exit of the mine, Lu Yi's gaze casually glanced over a corner in the left front, where a huge stone lay stretching across. He kept walking forward without stopping, until he was about 10 zhang away. Then, he put down the mining basket behind him, tightened his mining pick, and took out a moderately sized stone from the basket, weighing it slightly. The next moment, he ran towards the boulder, approached it, slid sideways, and stepped on the rock wall of the mine. With the help of the rebound force, he plunged down towards the back of the boulder, like an agile cheetah. 2 figures were squatting behind the boulder, using the boulder to cover their bodies. Unexpectedly, someone would notice their tracks. Upon hearing the commotion, it was too late to see Lu Yi wanting to get up again. Under the frightened gaze of the 2, Lu Yi raised his hand and threw out the ore in his hand, hitting one of them on the bridge of the nose. The person immediately let out a scream and collapsed on his back, bleeding profusely. Lu Yi's other hand's mining pick fired again, but failed to hit the second person. The person reacted well and dodged. However, Lu Yi had already rushed in front of him, kicked him and hit the opponent's abdomen. The person's face was full of pain, and he fell out and knelt down, spitting out a mouthful of sour water. Lu Yi stepped forward, grabbed the other person's hair with one hand, saw their face clearly, and sneered, "I said who it is, so it's your 2 brothers." He knew these 2 people, who were disciples of the Lu family. After the territory where the Lu family was located was captured by the Evil Moon Valley, some young disciples of the Lu family were sent here to serve as mining slaves. Strictly speaking, the 2 brothers, Lu Yi and Lu Shi, are also considered connected by fate. Have I ever said, "Don't let me see you again, or I'll kill you"? As Lu Yi spoke, he picked up a stone from the ground and smashed it hard. The impact was not light, and Lu's second son only snorted before being knocked unconscious. Lu Yi walked towards Lu, who had been injured by him before. Lu Laoda's forehead was smashed, blood blurred his eyes, and he vaguely saw Lu Yi walking towards him. He was so scared that he crawled around and said, "Please spare my life. My brothers didn't know it was you who came, they thought it was someone else. Spare my life." The Lu brothers were lurking in front of the exit of the mine, so naturally they didn't have any good intentions. Before being caught, these two people were both pampered, even if they became mining slaves, they didn't want to endure hardship. However, the status of mining slaves was low, and the people of Evil Moon Valley didn't treat them as human beings. Without the contribution of or exchange, they couldn't even exchange for food. So these two brothers often squat in front of a certain exit in the mine, robbing those single miners. Many people are unlucky because of this. Not only are the daily hard-mined ores stolen, but also beaten to half-death. Last time they just wanted to rob Lu Yi, but as a result, they were not opponents and were scolded. Unexpectedly, it's only been a few days since I met these two brothers again. The same rice nurtures 100 different people. Among the mining slaves, there are those who are lazy like the Lu brothers, as well as those who have dreams like Lu Yi. Over the past year, the contributions earned by Lu Yi through or exchange, in addition to ensuring daily food and clothing, have all been exchanged for the consumption of qi and blood pills. He has taken no less than 30 qi and blood pills. This has created a physique that is stronger than the vast majority of mining slaves. Although his physique is not particularly robust, the power hidden within his body has already surpassed that of ordinary people. Dealing with two lazy mining slaves is naturally not a problem. Lu Laoda was still pleading for mercy, but Lu Yi ignored him. He grabbed his hair, raised the other hand's stone, and smashed it hard. After more than a year of being a mining slave, Lu Yi has seen too many tragedies and has long understood a truth. In this cannibalistic world, any pity or sympathy is useless. The mining slaves are not in harmony either. Mining slaves from different forces are destined to be unable to unite. In order to obtain a high-quality ore, the mining slaves often suffer from head-to-head injuries. People die every day in the mining tunnel, and every distance they walk, they can see a scattered dead bone on the ground. Many mining slaves starve to death due to being robbed. Mr. Lu fell in response. Lu Yi picked up his mining pickaxe, put it back on his back, and walked towards the exit. He didn't kill the Lu brothers. It wasn't that he was soft-hearted, but rather that the injured mining slaves usually didn't live long here. Just a few steps away, a person suddenly rushed in at the exit in a panic. "Get lost!" The person whispered and slapped Lu Yi over. At that moment, Lu Yi was covered in cold all over, only because he saw a light blue light flowing through the opponent's palm. That is the radiance of spiritual power. In other words, it is a cultivator who is attacking him. Only by opening the spiritual orifice can one have the qualification to practice and be called a cultivator. The spiritual power of a cultivator is an extremely magical power. Lu Yi once saw a cultivator from the Evil Moon Valley take action. Although he did not have a strong influence, the person only lightly slapped and shattered a piece of ore. It was only after witnessing that magical scene that Lu Yi made up her mind to open her own spiritual orifice and become a cultivator. He also secretly evaluated that even the cultivator with the lowest cultivation in Evil Moon Valley could easily defeat 10 of himself. So when Lu Yi realized that he was being attacked by a cultivator, he knew that he was about to face a great crisis. At the critical moment of life and death, he abruptly stopped his pace and jumped back. With a numbness in his chest, the sound of a bone fracture rang out, and Lu Yi fell back to the ground in response. The intense pain made his mind much clearer, and he immediately got up when he realized he was still alive. The cultivator who took the palm was somewhat surprised. Although he didn't use all his strength just now, he just casually slapped it, but it shouldn't be something that the mining slave could bear. Taking advantage of the dim light to see the appearance of the mining slave, he blurted out, "Lu Yi." At this moment, Lu Yi had already put on a posture of turning and running away, and upon hearing the sound, he was also extremely shocked. Manager Yang. This cultivator surnamed Yang is a small steward in the mine. Lu Yi often interacts with him because the qi and blood pills were exchanged from him, so they are also quite familiar with each other. Manager Yang is very optimistic about Lu Yi. After all, it is rare for a mining slave like him to be able to endure hardship and hard work. However, with a positive outlook, there were no special privileges and no enlightenment for a day. There was an insurmountable gap between ordinary people like Lu Yi and cultivators. After recognizing Lu Yi, Manager Yang was relieved that he couldn't kill the other person with just one palm. Over the past year, Lu Yi had exchanged many qi and blood pills from him, and his physical fitness was already stronger than that of ordinary mining slaves. In addition, he only casually hit without deliberately killing anyone, so it's not surprising that the other person can survive. Across from Manager Yang, Lu Ye's heart was pounding with drums. The cultivators of Evil Moon Valley generally do not pay attention to the life and death of the mining slaves. They also know that mining slaves often engage in fights and brawls in their veins, and unless they encounter them, they basically do not pay attention. Lu Yi only managed to beat the Lu brothers in the head and blood, fainting on the ground. When he turned around, Manager Yang slapped him. In Lu Ye's eyes, it was clear that Manager Yang was teaching him a lesson. But soon he felt something was wrong again, because when Manager Yang rushed in, his expression was flustered and he didn't seem to be standing up for the Lu brothers. Just as he was daydreaming, Manager Yang had already shown a surprised expression, as if encountering Lu Yi here was a good thing. He leaned forward and grabbed Lu Ye's shoulder, saying, "Follow me." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Calculation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Calculation. Lu Yi suddenly felt a strong grip on himself, and his figure involuntarily followed forward, suppressing the pain in his chest. He spoke up and asked, "Manager Yang, where are we going?" "Stop talking nonsense." Manager Yang said fiercely, took a few steps, and then looked at the mining basket behind Lu Yi. "It's lost." Lu Yi dared not disobey and untied the mining basket, throwing it on the ground. However, he did not leave the mining pickaxe behind. Manager Yang only glanced at it and did not say anything more. "Go inward, the light behind you is getting farther and farther away. The depths of the mine are very dim, and only torches every few tens of zhang provide some light. Moreover, the channels within the entire mine vein are crisscrossed, and the terrain is extremely complex. Not every mine channel is illuminated by torches. Most mines are shrouded in darkness all year round, and no one knows where those mines lead. So when mining here, if you don't follow the traces of the torch, it's easy to get lost. Once the mining slaves of mortal bodies get lost in this place, their fate can be imagined. In the mouths of the mining slaves, the tunnels illuminated by torches are the open tunnels, while those that are constantly shrouded in darkness are the hidden tunnels. There are often examples of torches burning out, the clear path turning into the dark path, miners losing their way, and starving to death. As Manager Yang continued his journey, Lu Yi noticed something strange, which was that Manager Yang would occasionally turn around and look around with a nervous expression. "It seems like there is some danger behind me." Manager Yang's appearance made him nervous as well. "Lu Yi, have you mastered some secret way?" Manager Yang suddenly spoke. Lu Yi nodded and denied in front of Manager Yang that it was meaningless. In fact, not only did Lu Yi control several secret channels, but the powerful mining slaves in the mine each had several secret channels in their hands. Although the Mingdao is safe, there are not many places to mine. On the contrary, the hidden Dao is full of crises, and good goods can often be found. It is precisely with the help of these resource-rich secret channels that Lu Yi can harvest a full harvest every day, otherwise he would not have any extra contribution to exchange for qi and blood pills. This is also the reason why Manager Yang took Lu Yi with him after recognizing him. "What secret channels does Manager Yang want to go to?" Lu Yi asked, and when Manager Yang suddenly asked about the secret channels, he guessed. Manager Yang said, "Take me there and find the most hidden secret passage." "Okay." Lu Yi nodded and replied. After walking a few steps, she suddenly let out a muffled groan and reached out to cover her chest. The bone in his chest was slightly displaced by the blow, and he followed Manager Yang all the way, unable to rest properly. At this moment, the injury was affected, and the pain made him pause, with fine sweat oozing from his forehead. Yang, the steward, gave him a dissatisfied look and hesitated for a moment. He reached into a cloth bag around his waist and quickly grabbed a round, soybean-sized pill. He handed it to Lu Yi and said, "Take it." Lu Yi took it, but couldn't recognize what kind of pill it was. He had only been exposed to the qi and blood pill in the past year, and the pill in his hand was clearly different from the qi and blood pill. However, at this time, Manager Yang is useful to himself and should not harm himself. This thing is most likely for healing purposes. He stuffed the pill into his mouth, chewed it a few times, and his intestines turned blue with regret because the medicine was extremely bitter. "What do you want to chew it for? Just swallow it, this is a healing pill." Manager Yang didn't have a good airway. As expected, it was a healing pill. Lu Yi had a bitter melon face and had to be grateful, saying, "Thank you very much, Manager Yang. If you really want to thank me, then hurry up and leave." Manager Yang pushed him. Lu Yi had to muster up his energy and lead the way ahead. Although the pill was extremely bitter, its effect was surprisingly good. After taking it for a while, Lu Yi felt a surge of heat in her lower abdomen, and then the chest injury didn't hurt as much. Instead, it became crispy and itchy. This made him have to sigh, it is indeed a bitter medicine. Under the leadership of Lu Yi, the two of them continued to move forward in the crisscrossing mining tunnels. Occasionally, they encountered some returning mining slaves, and Manager Yang raised his hand and killed them. Lu Ye's eyelids twitched as she looked, and her suspicion became even clearer in her heart. About an hour later, the two of them stopped in front of a secret passage. Lu Yi already had a torch in his hand, which he had taken from nearby. He spoke up and said, "Manager Yang, this is the most hidden secret passage. After you enter, turn left at the first intersection, and at the second intersection." Before he could finish speaking, Manager Yang kicked him in and said, "Lead the way." Lu Ye's heart sank to the bottom of the valley, and he didn't want to lead the way ahead. From the various actions of Manager Yang along the way, it seems that he really led him to the right place, and there may not be a good ending. But the final attempt had already failed, and Yang Guanshi clearly did not intend to go deep into the underworld alone. It was much better to have Lu Yi, a person familiar with the terrain, guide him than to explore on his own. Helpless, Lu Yi could only continue to move forward. Along the way, there were 7 twists and turns, and even the cultivator Yang Guanshi couldn't remember the way back. After more than an hour, the mining passage ahead had been blocked and there was no further way forward. Lu Yi inserted the torch into a hidden stake on the rock wall. Yang, the steward, took a long breath and sat on the ground panting. He turned his head to glance at Lu Yi and couldn't help but laugh, "You really have the ability to find places like this." Lu Yi smiled and said, "Good luck." Manager Yang nodded and said no more. Lu Yi said, "Manager Yang, then I'll go back first." Yang Guanshi raised his eyelids slightly and said calmly, "Lu Yi, you are a smart person. Smart people should do smart things." As he spoke, he stood up and walked towards Lu Yi. The flickering flames illuminated his shadow like ghosts dancing wildly. "What do you mean?" said Lu Yi in a panic on her face. Manager Yang sighed and said, "Let me tell you clearly. The people from Haotian League have arrived, and this mine may not be able to be preserved for the time being. I came to avoid the disaster. Although I appreciate you bringing me here, I cannot let you go back." Lu Yi stepped back step by step, thinking to himself that it was indeed the case. When he saw Yang Guanshi kill those mining slaves before, he had some vague speculations. Yang Guanche was afraid that news of entering the mining tunnel would leak out, so he naturally wanted to kill all those who saw him. And the reason why he was surprised to see Lu Yi at the exit of the mine was because he knew that Lu Yi could take him to find a hidden place to hide. Hiding in such a place, even if the people of Haotian League capture the mineral veins, they are easily unable to find him, and there is a high probability of escaping a disaster. It was only by realizing his own situation that Lu Yi kept wanting to escape, but Manager Yang didn't let go. Where could he leave? I'll stay with you, I won't leave. Lu Yi leaned his back against the rock wall, unable to retreat. Yang, the steward, paused for a moment as if he had seriously considered it, but quickly shook his head and said, I don't bring much food, and I don't know how long I need to hide here. Although Xiaomeng cannot stay here for a long time, there will always be 1 or 2 months. After such a long time, you are starving to death, so how can you still accompany me? So as a thank you, I'll give you a ride. The distance between the two was only 3 zhang. As they finished speaking, Manager Yang slapped Lu Yi with a palm. Although his cultivation is not high, it would be easy to kill Lu Yi, an ordinary person. But he never expected that at the moment he started, Lu Yi would rush towards him with a mining axe in hand and hit him hard on the head with it. Lu Yi's ruthlessness and decisiveness surprised Manager Yang, but that's all. However, what happened next made his soul run out. He suddenly realized that the spiritual power in his spiritual orifice was operating in a mysterious way, as if there was an inexplicable force that could only stimulate a tiny bit of it. The mining pickaxe rushed towards him, and it was too late for Manager Yang to retreat. He could only block the palm that was slapping towards Lu Yi in front of him. With a crisp click, the mining pickaxe hit Manager Yang's arm and broke it. Manager Yang couldn't help but scream and retreated in succession. With a successful strike, Lu Yi's heart suddenly calmed down. It seemed that some of the rumors he had heard before were true, so there was still a way to survive. He gained power without mercy, pressing step by step, and his mining pickaxe kept rotating, leaving Yang, the steward, with little strength to fight back. Although Yang Guanche is a cultivator from the Evil Moon Valley, his cultivation is not high, which is why he became a manager of mineral veins. In his life, he rarely fought bravely against others and dealt with mineral slaves. He relied on his own cultivation to freely need, but after his cultivation was greatly suppressed, his strength was limited compared to ordinary people. When he met someone as ruthless as Lu Yi, he was immediately knocked unconscious. He dodged the fierce attack of the landing leaf while poking his hand into the cloth bag around his waist, and then raised his hand. A cold light flashed. Lu Yi was startled and quickly stopped his body, using a pickaxe to block it. The cold light cuts at the front end of the mining pickaxe, and the precision iron cast mining pickaxe is directly cut in half. Lu Yeding looked towards Manager Yang and found that he had already grabbed a long sword at some point. That was taken out of his waist bag. Manager Yang swung his sword fiercely, and Lu Yi, who was intimidating, dared not approach casually. The situation froze for a moment. In the deepest part of the mine, the mortal body and the cultivator faced each other. The former had a cold and resolute face, while the latter had a disheveled expression. The intense pain twisted his expression. Yuan magnetic field. Yang, the steward, gritted his teeth and drank softly. In just a moment, he had figured out why his spiritual power was imprisoned. This place is surprisingly rich in a large amount of metamagnetic ore. UNC ore is a very rare mineral, and in terms of its preciousness, its value is second to none in this vein. This type of ore is of great use to some cultivators. However, metamagnetic minerals have a characteristic of releasing an invisible force field that restricts the flow of all spiritual forces within their range. Once a cultivator is in this power field, their overall strength will inevitably decrease significantly. Yang Guanche's cultivation was limited, and he was shrouded in this elemental magnetic field. His spiritual power was almost completely forbidden, and he suddenly transformed from a towering cultivator to an ordinary mortal. He suddenly remembered that in the past year, Lu Yi did occasionally mine some elemental magnetic minerals, but others also mined them, but the quantity was not large, so he didn't pay much attention. After all, this vein contains various minerals. But now it seems that Lu Yi has always held a position with a large number of elemental magnetic mines in his hands, but he did not mine them extensively to exchange for contributions. He only occasionally mined a few pieces to avoid being coveted, which is really a deep scheming. Are you plotting against me? Yang, the steward, was going crazy. At this point, he still didn't understand that Lu Yi deliberately brought him here. The mortal who thought he could take life and death revealed his fangs at him. Yang, the steward, was furious. However, now that one of his arms was broken and he was injured in multiple places, he was not a match for Lu Yi in this environment where he could not fully exert his cultivation. So he made a quick decision and turned around to run. Seeing this scene, Lu Yeduan felt uneasy. He only had a partial understanding of the Yuan magnetic field. When he first submitted the Yuan magnetic mine, he heard a cultivator from the Evil Moon Valley talk about the characteristics of this mine, so he was cautious. Seeing with his own eyes the mining slaves that Yang Guanshi had killed on the way, he knew that this trip was full of misfortune, so he brought Yang Guanshi here. Before he broke Yang Guanshi's arm, he was not sure if the metamagnetic field here could limit Yang Guanshi's strength. Fortunately, auspicious people have their own natural signs, and the Yuan magnetic field has indeed constrained Manager Yang. But the range covered by the metamagnetic field is also limited. Once Manager Yang is allowed to escape from the range of the force field, he is doomed. Never let Manager Yang escape. Lu Yexin had fierce hair and bent down to pick up a fist-sized stone, throwing it fiercely at Manager Yang. The embarrassed young steward didn't expect Lu Yi to have this sneaky move, but was hit in the back of the head and stumbled to the ground. Before he could even get up, the howling wind had already reached his ears. Yang, the steward, hastily turned over and saw Lu Yi rushing closer, swinging the remaining half of the mining pickaxe in his hand. There's no way to escape now. Between life and death, Manager Yang shouted loudly, "Let's die together." With a sharp thrust of the long sword in his hand. The next moment, his head was smashed by the mining pickaxe, and Lu Yi was particularly worried. He smashed it a few more times and looked at the constantly convulsing figure in front of him, only then did he confirm that the other party could not live. Intense pain came from his thighs, and he looked down to see a long sword stuck in his leg, which was clearly the one in Yang Steward's hand. I didn't know when I was stabbed. He didn't feel it at all just now. Throwing down the mining pickaxe in his hand, Lu Yi sat down on the ground, panting heavily, feeling the beauty of life. New book, seeking all kinds of support. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Introduction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Introduction. Lu Yi didn't rest for too long, and there was still a sword inserted in his leg, causing intense pain that stimulated his nerves. And the location of the injury is not very good. If the injury is to the point of harm, then it's over. So after taking a moment to catch his breath, he began to examine his injuries, raised his hand to tear open the clothes at the location of the injury, carefully confirmed it, and let go of the heart he was carrying. This injury looks severe, but in reality it's just a skin injury. He did not blindly draw his sword, because after drawing it, he would inevitably face a situation of massive blood loss. If not handled properly, he may faint in a short period of time. He first tore off his clothes, tied them into long strips, tightly tied them up from the base of his thigh, and then completely tore open the clothes at the injured area, revealing the location of the wound. Then he turned his gaze to the waist of Manager Yang's corpse, where there was a palm-sized cloth bag. Lu Yi recognized this thing and the monks called it a storage bag. The healing pill that Manager Yang had given him before, as well as the long sword inserted into his leg, were all taken out of this storage bag by Manager Yang. The storage bag of a cultivator usually contains all the belongings of the cultivator. Lu Yi pulled over the body of Manager Yang, took off the storage bag from his waist, and looked carefully, amazed. There seems to be a lot of space inside this small bag, which can hold a lot of things. Having been in Kyushu for over a year, although Lu Yi doesn't have much knowledge about cultivation, he has heard a lot about the world of cultivation. It seems that every cultivator's storage bag has a mysterious invisible lock that can only be opened by the cultivator himself. Even if others have it, they cannot easily open the storage bag unless there is a special means to break that lock. The monks call that kind of lock prohibition. The storage bag in his hand looks like a cloth bag, but it is actually made of an unknown animal skin. Lu Yi prayed secretly in his heart not to lock this storage bag. Opening the bag, Lu Yi reached out with one hand and a heart moving up and down 7 or 8 times quickly, a happy expression appeared on his face. The bag was not locked, and his hand had already touched some things inside the bag. Presumably, when he suddenly became angry, Manager Yang hastily took out a long sword from his storage bag to confront the enemy. At that time, he was disturbed by the metamagnetic field and had no spare strength to lock his storage bag. There's help now. Lu Ye's mind was calm and he kept pulling out the things from his storage bag. He wants to find the qi and blood pill, as well as the healing pill that Manager Yang gave him before. After drawing the sword, one will definitely lose blood. If there is a qi and blood pill to supplement the power of qi and blood, it can reduce danger. The healing pill is undoubtedly a good thing and is suitable for the current situation. Soon, Lu Ye's side was filled with a mess of things: bottles, jars, as well as a lot of food, a few huge water sachets, and even a few books and some toilet paper. Lu Yi is very speechless. However, considering that Manager Yang is seeking refuge, it is understandable to bring more things. He searched through the bottles and jars and quickly found the qi and blood pills and healing pills he needed. There are many qi and blood pills, a total of 10 bottles, each with a shape of 20.30 pills. There is only one bottle of healing pill, leaving 7 or 8 pills. Steward Yang is in charge of the exchange of qi and blood pills for the mining slaves in the mine. He naturally carries a lot of qi and blood pills, which makes Lu Yi extremely happy. Previously, he needed to accumulate 10 points of contribution to exchange for qi and blood pills, and only exchanged 30 in a year. Now, by killing Manager Yang, he can obtain 200 to 300 pills at once. Get rich. He took out a pill of qi and blood and prepared to take it. After thinking about it, he added 2 more pills and stuffed them into his mouth. It wasn't that he didn't want to eat more, but mainly that eating too much at once was useless. He took out another healing pill and took one. Immediately after, he grabbed a huge water bag, opened the opening, and gave himself 2 sips before cleaning the wound with clean water. A cool feeling came from the wound, stirring up the wound while also bringing a hint of coolness, causing sweat to seep out of Lu Ye's forehead. After the wound was cleared, he took out another healing pill and set it aside for later use. He took a deep breath and grabbed the handle of the long sword with one hand, pulling it out abruptly. At that moment, Lu Yi was trembling all over, but he still gritted his teeth and didn't let out a sound. Without any time to delay, he quickly picked up the healing pill that had been left aside, crushed it with his hands, crushed it into powder, and scattered it around the wound. The healing pill can be taken internally, but he doesn't know if it has been applied externally. Let's give it a try. Unzip the clothes tied to the root of the thigh and wrap the wound. After a busy schedule, Lu Yi was almost drenched in sweat and lay on the ground, not wanting to move, gradually falling asleep. When he woke up again, it was already unknown how long had passed. He struggled to get up, leaned against the rock wall, and raised his hand to press around the thigh wound. Pain is transmitted, but there is no feeling of inflammation. It's a good thing. It seems that the healing pill that was applied externally and taken internally before has been effective. The most dangerous time has passed, and Lu Yi finally calmed down. His stomach began to growl. Before encountering Manager Yang, Lu Yi had not eaten for most of the day. He had originally planned to hand over the mind ore and exchange it for something to eat. However, he was coerced into the depths of the mine by Manager Yang and engaged in a fierce fight with him, eventually getting injured. Fortunately, he found a lot of food in Manager Yang's storage bag before, so Lu Yi took a piece of dried animal meat from it and started eating it in one gulp with clean water. The feeling of hunger slowly dissipated, and this place was rarely visited, so there was no danger for the time being. Lu Yi gradually became interested in Yang Guanche's relics. He started checking the things he had taken out of Manager Yang's storage bag while eating. He knows qi and blood pills and healing pills, but there are still some pills he hasn't seen before and doesn't know what their uses are. Some pills also emit a pungent smell, which is clearly not a good thing. Putting these pills aside, Lu Yi picked up a book casually and opened it to look at the flickering flames nearby, his face immediately fluttering with joy. It seems that Manager Yang is a kind-hearted person. This book is not only rich in content, but also illustrated with pictures and text. I don't know who drew it, but it is truly brilliant and vivid at present. With weak qi and weak body, it was not suitable to read this thing. He casually threw it aside, and Lu Yi picked up another book. There were words on the cover of this book, but upon closer inspection, it was a biography of the Sword Saint. Lu Yi became interested and flipped through a few pages, only to find that this thing was just a storybook. Leaving this book behind, Lu Yi picked up the third one. After reading the words on the cover, his heart slowed down half a beat. Golden Cicada's Carefree Resolution. He quickly opened it and looked at it, his expression gradually becoming excited. This is actually a cultivation technique. Like the first book, it is illustrated and easy to understand, which seems to be the cultivation method of Yang Guanche himself. After being excited, Lu Yi realized a very practical problem again. He has not yet opened his own spiritual orifice, and even if there is such a skill in front of him, it is useless. I let out a slight sigh and put down this golden cicada escape technique. Since there is no way to cultivate, watching too much is useless. Over the past year, he has made several attempts to open his own spiritual orifice, but has never had any clue. After a moment of despair, Lu Yi picked up Manager Yang's storage bag again. There were still some things inside that had not been taken out before. Reaching inside, take out each item one by one. I haven't found anything valuable again, but there are many rare ores, including a few fist-sized metamagnetic ores. These ores should be kept by Manager Yang himself, and he doesn't know what to do. Mining here for a year, Lu Yi has mined many rare minerals, so he is basically familiar with these ores. Even if he doesn't know what they are called or what their uses are, they have all been seen before, until he takes out a dark red or the size of a human head. He had never seen such a thing before, and he didn't know which mining slave had mined it, which eventually fell into the hands of Manager Yang. This is a bit strange, but rarity is precious. Even Lu Yi has never seen this thing before, so it must be of extraordinary value. Just as Lu Yi was about to put down this ore, his mind suddenly became dazed, and then a blurry shadow appeared before him, transforming into the shape of a tree. It's that shadow tree. Lu Yi was greatly surprised. There was a condition for the appearance of the shadow tree, which required him to concentrate his attention. Moreover, it did not appear every time, sometimes it did, and sometimes it did not. This time, the shadow tree unexpectedly emerged on its own. Just when Lu Yi was unsure, the vague shadow tree roots suddenly sprouted strands of roots, piercing into the dark red ore in his hand. In the next moment, the ore made a clicking sound and directly cracked open. A little orange light imprinted in Lu Ye's eyes, startling him because after the ore cracked, a fire appeared inside. He instinctively wanted to throw the fire out, but it stuck tightly to his hand and couldn't be thrown away. After a brief moment of panic, Lu Yi realized that the reason why the dark red stone had such a change should be related to the shadow tree. What made Lu Yi feel even more strange was that he didn't feel burned. The orange flame was rapidly shrinking, as if absorbed by something. In just a few breaths, the fire disappeared before Lu Ye's eyes. Just as he was greatly surprised, a scorching force suddenly surged in the Dantian area, pulling his own energy and blood towards that location. An indescribable pain came, and Lu Yi felt his lower abdomen being stirred by a tremendous force, as if he was about to tear him apart completely. He couldn't help but snort, and his clothes were instantly soaked with sweat. Just as he thought he was about to die, a slight noise came from his lower abdomen, and in that moment, he felt something break. The pain quickly dissipated, and in Lu Ye's eyes, the whole world underwent a wonderful change. He had an unreal feeling and felt the position of the lower abdomen Dantian, clearly sensing a strange force gathering there. A huge surprise enveloped him. He actually opened his spiritual orifice. I am very happy to see many old friends who have come to support me from martial arts, and I also thank everyone for their tips and votes. The new book is a new journey, so please support me a lot. Another question to answer is that this book will no longer be written in the Lifetime series because it would be too exhausting. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Talent Tree. Thanks to the Alliance leader of Pool C for rewarding. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Talent Tree. Thanks to the Alliance leader of Pool C for rewarding. Amidst the crackling sound of the explosion, the faint flame flickered a few times before finally extinguishing. The torch inserted on the hidden pile burned out. The hidden mine was plunged into darkness, but Lu Yi did not completely lose his light. In his eyes, there was still a faint light in the environment that should have been pitch black. He could see the outline of Manager Yang's body not far away, as well as the cold light on the sword he had thrown aside. It's not that the mine is not dark enough, but his vision has improved. After opening her own spiritual orifice, Lu Yi clearly felt some wonderful changes happening in her body. Even her weakened body due to injury gave birth to a lot of strength. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Lu Yi couldn't help but burst into laughter, echoing in this secluded environment. It wasn't until his injuries were affected that he quickly stopped. Suppressing the joy in his heart, he recalled the recent upheaval. It can be confirmed that his sudden enlightenment was related to the shadow tree, as well as to the dark red ore he had never seen before. No, the ore is not the key is the orange flame inside the ore. The shadow tree sprouted roots, devouring the flames, and as a result, it enlightened itself. The shadow tree has never undergone such a change. It should have been stimulated by the orange flame. It seems that my previous thoughts were correct. This shadow tree can indeed provide me with some wonderful help, but I have never found the right way. Clarifying his thoughts, he quickly focused and wanted to see what the shadow tree looked like now. Anyway, that orange flame was eaten by the shadow tree and there would always be some changes. Perhaps due to excessive emotional excitement, even though Lu Yi had tried to concentrate, he couldn't see the shadow tree. This happened frequently before, which was the reason for his lack of concentration. He took a few deep breaths, calmed his mood, and waited for a long time before trying again. This time, I successfully saw the shadow tree, and as expected, the originally gray shadow tree underwent some changes, just as Lu Yi had imagined. Overall, the shadow tree still looks like that. The roots that had grown before have never been seen, but near the position below the tree crown, there is a leaf shrouded in blazing flames, as if it is burning. Lu Yi tried to concentrate and looked at the burning leaves, faintly seeing a very complex and cumbersome pattern imprinted on them. He focused his mind and wanted to see the pattern clearly. Sudden mutation. A small leaf constantly magnified in front of him, instantly blocking his view. At the same time, a large amount of inexplicable information rushed into his mind uncontrollably. Lu Yeduan felt as if someone had hit him hard on the head with a sledgehammer, without even saying a word, and he passed out. When she woke up again, Lu Yi was dizzy and had a splitting headache. Shaking his head, he struggled to get up and leaned against the rock wall. He recalled his experiences before falling into a coma, but was surprised to find that his mind had accumulated a lot of information he had never encountered before, which was deeply ingrained, as if it were his own memory. Lu Yi calmed down and carefully investigated these memories that should not have existed, quickly understanding the truth behind the matter. The reason is still the shadow tree. The shadow tree swallowed up the orange flame, resulting in an additional burning leaf on the tree. There is a mysterious pattern on the leaves that carries a lot of magical knowledge. When Lu Yi carefully explores, this knowledge is forcefully infused into his mind. Sharp and sharp. This is what is carried in the leaves. It is a spiritual pattern called sharpness. Lu Yi has heard of spiritual patterns, which are something that contains mysterious power and are closely related to the life, cultivation, and combat of cultivators. There seems to be another type of person who specializes in studying spiritual patterns, known as spiritual pattern masters, but this type of person is generally rare because it is not easy to study spiritual patterns. After understanding these, Lu Yi wanted to mobilize the spiritual power inside his spiritual orifice. However, he found that the spiritual powers in his spiritual orifice were extremely heavy and could not be mobilized at all. After a moment of contemplation, Lu Yi remembered that she was still shrouded in a metamagnetic field, and it was not easy to mobilize her spiritual power. It was for this reason that Manager Yang died in his hands before. He stood up and stumbled towards the distance, feeling the reaction of spiritual power in his spiritual orifice as he walked, until he could mobilize these spiritual powers before stopping. This position had already left the range covered by the elemental magnetic field. The originally heavy spiritual power became exceptionally active, and under the influence of Lu Yi, it swam within his body. Wherever it went, it was warm and warm. He, who had never experienced this before, was greatly surprised. After playing for a moment, he remembered the spiritual pattern and almost instinctively poured spiritual power into his palm. In an instant, a brilliant light flashed through his palm. Although it passed in a flash, Lu Yi still saw clearly that the brilliance was an extremely complicated and tedious pattern, which was exactly the same as the pattern carried on the burning leaves. Is this the sharpness? Lu Yi lowered his head to examine his palm. In theory, he had just opened his spiritual orifice and had only a partial understanding of how to use spiritual power, let alone constructing a spiritual pattern with spiritual power. But unfortunately, he made it so easily, as if it had undergone countless exercises. A faint depletion bloomed on the palm, like a large firefly, and there were bursts of stinging pain in the palm, giving Lu Yi the feeling of having many needles piercing her flesh. Although it was a palm, it gave people an extremely sharp feeling at this moment. Lu Yi felt like he could chop open a stone with one palm. With this thought in mind, he immediately pulled over a basin-sized stone from the side, which could be seen everywhere in the mine and had no value. Placing the stone in front of him, Lu Yi swung his sword with a single palm. The stone the size of a basin cracked in response, and the incision was neat and tidy. Lu Yi was stunned. Although he thought he could split a stone just now, he never expected such an effect. It wasn't splitting, it was cutting, and the one who cut this stone was just his hand. And all of this is just due to the blessing of sharpness. This spiritual stripe seems to make the object being blessed extremely sharp. Previously, I saw a cultivator from the Evil Moon Valley smashing a stone with one palm, and he was amazed. But now it seems that he also has the ability to do it, and he has done it even better. This is still cutting stones, what if it's cutting people? The bright light on his palm slowly dissipated after cutting open the stone, which was the reason for his spiritual exhaustion. At the same time, Lu Yi felt empty and an endless sense of weakness struck. He has a bad heart. I just had an epiphany, and my heart was itching for a moment, condensing a spiritual line. It was somewhat beyond my control, which was a serious overdraft. Tiredness struck, and Lu Yi held back. If he fell asleep at this moment, he didn't know if he could still wake up. He quickly returned to where he had just been, picked up a bottle of qi and blood pill, poured out a few pills and stuffed them into his mouth, then picked up a piece of animal meat and ate it in large gulps. The medicinal effect of the qi and blood pill gradually filled his body, and his weakness gradually subsided. Leaning against the rock wall, he sorted his thoughts. After devouring an orange flame, the shadow tree that accompanied him for over a year opened his spiritual orifice and became a cultivator. Then, while examining the shadow tree, he discovered a burning leaf, from which he obtained the spiritual pattern of sharpness. Looking at the shadow tree again at this moment, Lu Yi couldn't help but feel a strong sense of sight. After a moment of contemplation, Lu Yi suddenly realized, isn't this the talent tree? Habitually opening the martial arts cultivation to prepare for updates, only to find that it has already been completed. In addition, thanks to Qi Qi Si's reward, the first leader of humanity was born. He was flattered and grateful. He also thanked other brothers and sisters who rewarded him. Since there were too many people, he would not thank them one by one. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Plan. Thanks to the leader of Zhuangsheng Xiaomeng's butterfly lover A for giving a reward. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Plan. Thanks to the leader of Zhuangsheng Xiaomeng's butterfly lover A for giving a reward. A leaf on the talent tree carries spiritual patterns like sharpness. What about the other leaves? Does it also carry other spiritual patterns? If one can light up more leaves, wouldn't it be possible to gain more knowledge about spiritual patterns? Thinking of the huge crown and countless leaves of the talent tree, Lu Ye's heart became hot. How to light up other leaves? Lu Yi also had some vague speculations in her heart, but there is no way to confirm it now, so she can only wait until there is a chance to talk about it in the future. What he can do now is to open up more spiritual orifices as soon as possible and improve his cultivation. The first spiritual opening of a cultivator is located at the dantian, which is the starting point of cultivation and is called the source spirit opening. The subsequent spiritual opening depends on the cultivator's cultivation techniques. Different cultivation methods have different positions for opening spiritual orifices. The more spiritual orifices are opened, the higher the cultivation level. That golden cicada escape technique has its place. Lu Yi calmed down her excitement for a moment, picked up Manager Yang's storage bag and began packing things. It wasn't until then that Lu Yi was surprised to find that her sharp palm, which had just been engraved, was riddled with wounds and seemed to have been pierced by countless needles, bleeding profusely. Under the excitement just now, he didn't feel it. At this moment, I realized that the piercing pain was constantly stimulating my nerves. He secretly reflected on himself. It seemed that if he got any spiritual tattoos in the future, he would easily not be able to use them on himself. Quickly, he packed up the things he had taken out before and moved away from the range enveloped by the metamagnetic field. There were two paths ahead of him at the moment. One was to leave the mine. The reason why Manager Yang came to avoid the disaster was because people from the Haotian Alliance had attacked, and with the power of the Evil Moon Valley on the mine, he couldn't hold on to this place. That's why he had to take refuge first. Otherwise, if the mine is captured, as a disciple of the Evil Moon Valley, he will definitely face more misfortune than good. If I can connect with the cultivators of Haotian Alliance, then I can escape from the sea of suffering and no longer have to stay here to be oppressed. But this is clearly not a wise choice. Steward Yang has already received news that he has come in for refuge, and there must be other disciples from the Evil Moon Valley who will come in. This is the most chaotic time, and it would be best if he could successfully leave the mine. However, if he accidentally encounters a disciple from the Evil Moon Valley who came in for refuge, Lu Ye's fate will be the same as the mining slaves who were killed by Steward Yang before. So he chose the second path, temporarily holding his ground and staying here. This place is extremely secluded, and ordinary people cannot find it. Moreover, it can be attacked and defended if one of the disciples of the Evil Moon Valley accidentally breaks in. Lu Yi can also use the Yuan magnetic field to eat others, so as not to have no counterattack power. Furthermore, his injury has not yet healed and it is indeed difficult for him to move around much. He recalled what Manager Yang had said to him before, and if I remember correctly, that's what Manager Yang said. The people from Haotian Alliance have called, and the mineral veins are temporarily unable to be preserved. Haotian Alliance will not stay for long, but it is always needed for 1 or 2 months. The underlying meaning of this statement is very obvious. Manager Yang believes that even if Haotian Alliance can capture this place, it is impossible to hold on to this mineral vein for a long time. Therefore, within 1 or 2 months, Haotian Alliance will withdraw, and the mineral vein will return to the hands of Evil Moon Valley. Based on the information he currently possesses, Lu Yi has a calculation in his heart. Stay here to recuperate, practice, and leave the mining tunnel within a month to find the people of Haotian Alliance and save yourself from the sea of suffering. Having made up his mind, Lu Yi felt a lot more at ease in his heart. The most difficult days had already passed, and now he has successfully opened his spiritual orifice, with a talent tree by his side. The good days ahead are still long, so there is no need to worry too much now. Looking for a suitable location, Lu Yi took out a bed of bedding from Young Steward's storage bag, spread it out, and sat quietly on it, taking out the book of the Golden Cicada escape technique to study it carefully. There was darkness in the mind passage, and now Lu Yi had successfully opened his mind. Otherwise, he wouldn't have seen anything. Soon, he discovered something interesting, which was that when he focused his spiritual power on his eyes, he could see more clearly. Unfortunately, he only opened the source spiritual orifice and his spiritual power is limited, so he cannot maintain it for a long time. Hungry to eat, sleepy to sleep, except for the poor surrounding environment, there was nothing else. Moreover, Lu Yi is now immersed in the excitement of opening his spiritual opening and has not had much demand for the environment. In the darkness, there was no way to calculate time, and Lu Yi didn't know how long it had been, about a few days. The injuries on my legs and hands have almost healed. After opening my spiritual orifice and becoming a cultivator, it seems that my physical fitness has also improved significantly. If I had been stabbed in my thigh before, I would have had to cultivate for 10.5 days before I could walk. Of course, this is also related to Lu Ye's daily intake of qi and blood pills. Through studying the Golden Cicada escape technique, Lu Yi found that he couldn't use this cultivation technique for the time being. It wasn't that there were any problems with the technique itself, but rather that Lu Yi had opened up his spiritual orifice. If he wanted to open the next spiritual orifice, there were still some conditions. If the spiritual orifices are compared to the lakes within a cultivator's body, then the water in the lakes is the cultivator's spiritual power. Therefore, the more spiritual orifices a cultivator opens, the greater the spiritual power hidden within their body. But to open the next spiritual opening, the prerequisite is that the previous spiritual opening reaches a complete level. In simple terms, it requires spiritual power to fill the spiritual opening. On Lu Ye's body, what he needs to do now is to continuously cultivate and strengthen the spiritual power accumulated in the source spiritual body. One day, the spiritual power of the source spiritual body reaches a full level before he can open the next spiritual body. At that time, he will need to use the Golden Cicada Xiaoyao technique. There are several ways to strengthen spiritual power. The most common way is to take spiritual pills for cultivation, which will transform into spiritual power and fill the spiritual orifices. The second type is to swallow and exhale spiritual energy. There is spiritual energy in any environment, but it is only a matter of quantity. After the cultivator opens the spiritual orifice, they can feel the existence of spiritual energy. During the process of swallowing and exhaling, they can refine these spiritual energies into their body and strengthen their personal cultivation. The third method is to use spirit stones, which Lu Yi has only heard of and has not seen before. There is also the last one, refining essence and transforming qi. Strengthening one's own qi and blood power first, and then refining it into spiritual power, can also achieve the goal of cultivation. Each method has its own advantages and disadvantages, and it is not easy to generalize. Although Lu Yi did not enter the ranks of cultivators before, he often heard other mining slaves talk about their cultivation. Everyone talked about it with a longing, hoping that one day they could fly up to the branches and turn a black chicken into a phoenix. Lu Yi was deeply influenced and learned some basic things. At present, Lu Yi cannot use the first method. He does not have the spiritual pill for cultivation. Although it can be confirmed that there must be some in Yang Guancher's storage bag, he has no way to distinguish among so many bottles and jars, and he dare not try rashly. In the second case, Lu Yi tried, but he didn't know the reason why this place was close to the metamagnetic field. Anyway, he didn't feel the presence of any spiritual energy, so he couldn't swallow it. The only thing he can do is refine and transform qi. Thank you to Zhuangsheng Xiaomeng for the reward from Butterfly A. The Butterfly Alliance leader is an old friend of Wu Yan, and I am glad to see his old friend again here. Thank you again. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Encounter on the road. In the charge, you are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 6. Encounter on the road. In the charge, taking qi and blood pills can strengthen the power of qi and blood, and then stimulate the spiritual power in the spiritual orifice to refine qi and blood, which can obtain more spiritual power. Thanks to the relics of Manager Yang, this is the only way for Lu Yi to practice at present. Previously counted, there were 253 qi and blood pills in total, which is not a small quantity. Lu Yi thought that so many qi and blood pills were enough for her to use, but when she started practicing, she realized that these qi and blood pills probably wouldn't last long. For the first time practicing, he only refined the medicinal effects of 2 qi and blood pills. He had never done this before, and it took him a long time to figure out how to refine and transform qi. On the second attempt, he was able to refine 4 qi and blood pills, which had a taste of practice making perfect. 6 pills for the third time, 10 pills for the fourth time. The more one cultivates, the faster the rate of consumption of qi and blood pills, because the spiritual power in their spiritual orifices is increasing every day. The more spiritual power, the higher the efficiency of refining and transforming qi, and the greater the consumption of qi and blood pills. Lu Yi understood one thing: this qi and blood pill is indeed not a very good thing. Otherwise, as a successful cultivator, he wouldn't have spent so much. A true cultivator is likely to use some specialized spiritual pills for cultivation, but unfortunately he doesn't know them and doesn't dare to try them casually. The mine was dimly lit, and Lu Yi didn't know how long it had been. When he had exhausted all his qi and blood pills, he knew he had to go out. It's not because there are no resources for cultivation, but because there is no food to eat. After starting to refine and transform qi, his appetite opened up. Manager Yang brought a lot of food with him. If he saved some food, it would be enough to eat for 2 months. After all, he planned to hide here for a long time, so how could he not make sufficient preparations? Although it is impossible to accurately calculate the time, Lu Yi estimates that he has only been practicing for more than 10 days until now. During this period of cultivation, Lu Yi has not gained much, but it is also not small. The spiritual power in the source spiritual orifice is already full. In other words, he has the qualification to open the next spiritual orifice and practice the golden cicada free technique. However, when he followed the guidance of the golden cicada free and easy technique to open the second spiritual orifice, he was unable to find the position. Not only did he fail to cultivate, but he also wasted a lot of spiritual power in vain. No wonder I used to hear people say that cultivation requires guidance from elders, and I don't know how many detours I need to take to explore like this. So although he has consumed all his qi and blood pills, he is still just a cultivator who opens his mind. His injury has healed and does not hinder his movement. What made Lu Yi a little conflicted was how to handle Manager Yang's storage bag. If it were left here, Lu Yi felt unwilling. This is Yang Guancher's lifelong savings, which contain many good things. Apart from that, those rare minerals are valuable. He has no relatives or elders to care for in this world, and his future cultivation will definitely consume a lot of resources. With Yang Guancher's relics, at least in the early stage, he doesn't have to worry about the resources for cultivation. But it's not appropriate to carry it with you. This is a world of cultivation, and it's not uncommon for people to kill or take lives when they see money. Every time a cultivator carries a precious storage bag, it's hard to guarantee that they won't have any malicious intentions when they see it. After much consideration, Lu Yi decided to put on his storage bag. Wealth and fortune are always in danger, and if he misses this opportunity, he may not have the chance to make such a windfall again. After making up his mind, Lu Yi returned to the place where he had killed Manager Yang before and picked up his chopped mining pick. Since we have decided to bring a storage bag, we cannot let go of the elemental magnetic minerals here, as they are still very precious. Lifting the mining pickaxe, Lu Yi sweated profusely. He has been doing mining for a year and is already proficient in it. Moreover, he now has spiritual power as his foundation, and his efficiency is much faster than before. One after another, he mined out metamagnetic minerals and put them in storage bags. Until all the metamagnetic mines were mined out, Lu Yi finally abandoned the mining pick. If everything goes smoothly, I won't be able to use this thing in the future. He took off his clothes, put the storage bag close to his body, and tied a cloth strip around his body. This way, as long as he was not stripped naked and searched, the existence of the storage bag would not be exposed. However, Yang, the steward, took out his long sword ahead of time. Along the way, it may not be safe. He has a weapon in his hand, so he can handle emergencies. Everything was ready, and Lu Yi took a deep breath and followed his memory towards the layman. He walked cautiously all the way, afraid that a cultivator from the Evil Moon Valley would suddenly emerge from the darkness, so he dared not walk too fast to avoid revealing his whereabouts. However, he could do whatever he was afraid of, and as he turned a corner in the darkness and entered a mining tunnel, his body suddenly froze. Not far ahead, a figure leaned against the rock wall of this mine passage, breathing lightly. The air is still filled with a faint smell of blood. Lu Yi wanted to retreat, but it was too late. The person turned to look at Lu Yi and exclaimed in surprise, "Lu Yi." Lu Ye's heart and hair immediately tightened. Being able to see his appearance clearly in such darkness indicated that he was a cultivator, and the one who knew him was undoubtedly a cultivator from the Evil Moon Valley. Sure enough, Manager Yang would have thought of taking refuge in the mine, and other cultivators from the Evil Moon Valley could also have thought of how many people from the Evil Moon Valley were hidden in this mine now. With a sudden change of heart, Lu Yi focused his spiritual power on his eyes and finally saw the other person's appearance clearly. He is a cultivator named Zhuangsheng in the mine, under the jurisdiction of Manager Yang. His status is lower than that of Manager Yang, and his cultivation level is probably not as good as that of Manager Yang. Zhuangsheng seems to have been injured this week, and the bloody smell is emanating from him. "You come over." Zhuangsheng lowered his voice to greet him. "Okay." Lu Yi immediately responded and took a step towards Zhuangsheng, walking faster and faster. Zhuangsheng immediately realized something was wrong, mainly because Lu Yi was actually holding a sword in his hand. He couldn't help but frown and say, "Where did you get this sword?" This sword appears to be the accessory sword of the cultivator of Evil Moon Valley, and it is very problematic for Lu Yi to hold it in his hand. Lu Yi didn't answer, it was only 3 zhang away from Zhuangsheng. Zhuangsheng finally felt Lu Yi's killing intent and quickly stood up, gritting his teeth and drinking softly, "I'll kill you, little beast." As he spoke, he lifted his sword and stabbed towards Lu Yi. The long sword was infused with spiritual power, and in the darkness, a faint and brilliant light bloomed. This sword doesn't require much attention, it just infuses spiritual power into the long sword, enhancing its killing power. Faced with Lu Yi, a mortal, Zhuangsheng naturally felt that he could take life and death. The last person who thought this was Manager Yang, the bones have already begun to rot. The sword light rapidly magnified in Lu Yi's field of vision, and he exerted all his spiritual power to focus on his eyes. The whole world seemed to slow down a lot. Unlike using the Yuan magnetic field to ambush Manager Yang, this is the first time that Lu Yi has fought head-on with a cultivator, and he cannot tolerate any hesitation or retreat. Fortunately, this cultivator's cultivation was not high and he was seriously injured, which is the reason why Lu Yi dared to use his killing heart. As the long sword was about to approach, Lu Yi slid sideways, narrowly avoiding it. Then, he flipped the sword back in his hand, and at the same time, a mysterious and complex pattern flashed across it. Blessed by sharpness. For the first time, a new book has been on the list for a long time, so I don't know what the rules of the new book list are. I can only ask brothers and sisters to fire at me. For a new book, the new book list is the most important list, so please feel free to thank everyone. Let's try our best to achieve a good ranking and let more people see this new book. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Escape from the Sea of Sorrow. Thanks to the Alliance leader of the Humanity Fire for rewarding. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Escape from the Sea of Sorrow. Thanks to the Alliance leader of the Humanity Fire for rewarding. Lu Yi is not sure how high Zhuangsheng's cultivation level is, but ultimately he is much stronger than him. Even if Zhuangsheng was injured, it was not something that a single-minded cultivator like him could handle at will. Killing the heart requires corresponding means to assist in achieving it, and the sharpness is the means of Lu Yi. When he had nothing to do before, he had experimented that the spiritual pattern of sharpness could not only be applied to his own palm, but also to weapons, and it was more effective. The light that burst out in that moment made Zhuangsheng couldn't help but lose his mind. He didn't even know when Lu Yi became a cultivator. The two swords collided with a crisp sound, and Zhuangsheng was surprised to find that his long sword had been cut off by his waist. This scared him a lot, and when facing the enemy, the weapon was folded first, which was undoubtedly a huge blow. Just as Zhuangsheng was shocked, Lu Yi's second sword had arrived. After cutting off Zhuangsheng's matching sword, he immediately lifted his sword and swung it towards Zhuangsheng's neck. He doesn't understand any swordsmanship, nor does he master any mysterious moves, so he can only use this simplest chopping. Zhuangsheng's souls were all rising, and at this moment they were too close to each other. It was too late to retreat. He could only exert all his strength to activate his remaining spiritual protection. In theory, with his cultivation, he could withstand the attack of a one-whole cultivator like Lu Yi. Even if the opponent had weapons in their hands, they could not break through his spiritual protection. However, in fact, when the long sword fell, Zhuangsheng's protective spiritual energy did not have the expected effect. The long sword first broke through the layer of protection, and then directly cut into Zhuangsheng's neck. The sound of sharp tools entering the flesh sounded, and Lu Yi felt a few drops of warm blood splattered on his face. Bastard! Zhuangsheng was furious and accidentally injured by Lu Yi, a mining slave. He raised his hand and slapped Lu Yi. However, Lu Yi had already let go of his long sword and ran deep into the mine without looking back. Behind him came the sound of Zhuangsheng chasing, and Lu Yi ran faster. Gradually, he felt that there was no sound behind him, so he stopped walking. After waiting for a while, he turned around and saw Zhuangsheng's figure rushing to the ground halfway. He was not sure if the other person was dead or not. He picked up a few stones from the side and threw them at him, but Zhuangsheng didn't react at all. Braving his courage, he approached Zhuangsheng and looked down. He saw a large amount of blood staining the ground under Zhuangsheng's body, and the long sword was still stuck in his neck, with no vitality left. Although Lu Yi's second sword did not directly take Zhuangsheng's life, it also cut off half of the opponent's neck. With such a serious injury, Zhuangsheng could not survive. A desperate battle ended in the victory of Lu Yi. He took a long breath and became more aware of the dangers of this world. He walked forward and grabbed the handle of the long sword. Just as he was about to pull it out, he noticed a slight abnormality in the corner of his eye. Looking up, his whole body was cold. Just because another person appeared in front of him at an unknown time, Lu Yi was completely unaware. There is a big gap in cultivation between oneself and the other party. For some reason, Lu Yi had a thought in his heart that if such a person wanted to kill him, it would probably just be a matter of using his fingers, even if he had the blessing of sharpness. He gritted his teeth, suppressing the panic in his heart, and pulled out his long sword, lying horizontally in front of him, in a defensive posture. His body trembled slightly due to nervousness. The visitor felt his hostility and couldn't help but laugh, sensing the fluctuation of spiritual power here. Come and investigate. Don't be nervous. He spoke like this and walked forward step by step to Zhuangsheng. He lowered his head and nodded slightly, saying, "The remnants of Evil Moon Valley." He then looked up at Landing Yi and said, "Which disciple are you?" The distance between them was only 1 zhang, and Lu Yi also saw the appearance of the newcomer clearly. He was a half-aged man with a rosy face, a tall figure, and a slightly deep and hoarse voice, but with an indescribable affinity. Based on the questions from these half-elders, Lu Yi immediately had a guess in his heart and replied, "Xiantian sect." Xiantian sect. The half-elder was somewhat surprised, the Xiantian sect that was exterminated a year ago. Yes. Lu Yi gave a positive answer. The old man couldn't help but glance up and down at him and said, "So, are you a mining slave who was taken captive?" Lu Yi nodded. The old man was immediately amazed. A mining slave had killed a cultivator from the Evil Moon Valley. If he hadn't seen this with his own eyes, no one would have dared to believe it. "What cultivation are you?" the old man asked again. "I had an epiphany," Lu Yi replied, realizing the meaning behind the old man's words. He took the initiative to explain, "He was injured, and I ambushed him." The old man looked at him with a smile and said, "I have some courage." "Uncle, are you from the Haotian Alliance?" Although Lu Yi had a guess in his heart, he still needed to confirm this matter. The old man reached out and stroked his beard, "Not bad, I am from the Haotian Alliance." Lu Yi was overjoyed. It seemed that just as Steward Yang had previously worried, the Haotian League had attacked, and the Evil Moon Valley could not guard this mine vein at all. This can be seen from the fact that the old man had already killed into the mine vein. Nowadays, Haotian League is probably already in charge of the mining veins. As for whether the old man was lying to him or not, there was no need to do so. There was a huge gap in strength between them, and they really wanted to harm themselves, so they raised their hand and killed him. "Please help me out of the sea of suffering, my father. Lol. Lu Yelyan hurriedly said. He wanted to leave this mine, and he didn't know if he would encounter any danger along the way. After finally encountering such a senior expert, he naturally hugged his thigh and became a pendant to be safe. The old man nodded and said, "Then follow me. I'm also about to go out." "Thank you very much, father. Lol. Lu Yi was very grateful. After the old man finished speaking, he led the way ahead, but Lu Yi didn't catch up immediately. Instead, he squatted down and began to grope on Zhou Cheng's body. "Quickly find a storage bag." The storage bag is something that almost every cultivator has, and it doesn't seem like it's too valuable. Lu Yi was in a happy mood and ran to follow the old man. The old man glanced at him with a smile and reached out his hand, "Bring it." Lu Yeduan felt as uncomfortable as eating a fly, but considering the current situation, he obediently presented the storage bag. The old man took the storage bag and reached out to wipe the opening of the bag. A light flashed through. Just as Lu Yi was harboring a grudge in his heart, the old man threw the storage bag back and said, "This bottle of dragon and tiger pill has been accepted by the old man with a smile. It's a big supplement. You can't bear it, young man. You should be filial to the old man." Lu Yi held the storage bag that had been thrown back in both hands. Only then did he understand that they were not trying to snatch his loot, but rather knew that his cultivation was weak and he couldn't unlock the lock of the storage bag, so he casually helped. This old man is not bad. Lu Yi thought to himself and thanked him, "Thank you very much." Feeling happy again after waking up, there was another leader. "Thank you for the generous reward from the humanitarian fire. The new book is currently ranked 5th on the list, and our brothers are indeed powerful. Let's continue to charge and seek various supports." In addition, regarding the update, the new book period cannot be updated too quickly because there is a word count requirement to maintain the list. It is tentatively scheduled to have a minimum of 3 changes per day, and the leader of the alliance will add 1 chapter. This chapter will be added even if it is updated. In addition, we still owe the leaders of Chi Chi and Butterfly 1 chapter each, which will be added gradually in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Embrace the light. Thanks to the alliance leader who sweeps the end of the world for rewarding. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Embrace the light. Thanks to the alliance leader who swept across the horizon for his reward. In the dark mine, Lu Yi followed the old man forward while exploring the contents of the storage bag. Quickly found some chi and blood pills and a few healing pills. Just like the situation in Manager Yang's storage bag, there were also some messy bottles and jars that Lu Yi didn't know at all. There are also a few ore pieces, but their quality is not as good as those collected by Manager Yang. Zhou Cheng's status is not as good as Yang Guanchu's, and his wealth is naturally not as rich as Yang Guanchu's. However, Lu Yi was already very satisfied. After all, it was something he picked up for nothing. Put the long sword in the storage bag and tie it around your waist. With this storage bag as a cover, the storage bag for personal collection will be safer. He wanted to ask the old man for advice on cultivation and spiritual pills, but after some consideration, he decided not to. He was a senior expert, and although he looked friendly and kind, no one could say for sure what kind of nature he had. This chance encounter, Lu Yi had no position to ask him for advice on these matters. The top priority is to follow him out of the mine. If there is any inappropriate language that offends others, then we will sacrifice our efforts. The old man didn't walk fast ahead, but Lu Yi had to run a little to keep up, and occasionally he would suddenly disappear and quickly return. Lu Yi secretly speculated that he might have discovered a hidden disciple of the evil Moon Valley and had him kill him. The mining channels in the veins are crisscrossing and the terrain is complex. Even when Lu Yi passes through each intersection, he needs to discern a little to find the right path. However, the old man only walks leisurely, but every path he takes is the right one. It only takes half an hour, and there is light coming from the front. That is the exit of the mine. As the old man walked out of the dimly lit mine and embraced the light again, Lu Yi couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder in his life. Tang Lao. At the exit of the mining tunnel, there are several figures guarding. These are cultivators from various sects in the Haotian League, guarding against disciples from the evil Moon Valley escaping from them. Seeing the old man appear, everyone bows in unison. The old man nodded slightly. One of the leading middle-aged cultivators looked at Lu Yi in confusion and asked, "Tang Lao, is he?" The old man said, "The disciple of Xiantian's sect, who was destroyed a year ago, was kidnapped here as a mining slave. He helped me a little inside and took him out along the way." The middle-aged cultivator understood and waved to a young cultivator next to him, "Take him to record it." "Yes." The young cultivator took orders and said to Lu Yi, "Follow me." Lu Yi turned his head and looked at Tang Lao, intending to express his gratitude, but Tang Lao had already walked straight towards the distance. The middle-aged cultivator who had just spoken followed closely and said, "Tang Lao, Vice Leader Pang has an order. When you come out, please go see him and discuss something important." Tang Lao reached out to stroke his beard and complained, "A handful of old bones cannot rest for a moment." Speaking like this, he rose up into the sky and disappeared in an instant. At this moment, Lu Yi was already heading in a different direction under the guidance of the young cultivator. The cultivator had no intention of communicating with him, and Lu Yi naturally remained silent. Recalling what Tang Lao Fong had just said, Lu Yi smiled knowingly. This old man is really good. He didn't do anything to help others in the mine, on the contrary, he accepted their kindness, but he said so on purpose. For a senior expert like him, a casual word can easily resolve many of Lu Ye's troubles. For example, the storage bag hanging around his waist. For Lu Yi at present, this thing is actually a trouble. When he searched for this storage bag from Zhuangsheng, Lu Yi already had the corresponding consciousness. He even planned to give away this storage bag if anyone from the Haotian alliance took notice. After all, his current identity is just a mining slave in the Evil Moon Valley, and he will have to rely on others. He only has what he has to give up, and he keeps all the truly good things close to him. A weekly storage bag is not a big pity. But with Tang Laofeng's casual words, I'm afraid no one will come up with the idea of this storage bag. Finally, I couldn't express my gratitude in person, which made Lu Yi a little regretful. However, as time goes by, there will always be a chance. Outside the mining road is a huge valley surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, with only one road to the east to enter. At this moment, the valley is bustling with people coming and going. Lu Yi looked up and saw many remnants of war in the valley, some of which had not dried up blood on the ground. The entire valley was filled with a strong smell of blood. It seems that when the Haotian alliance captured this place, the people of Evil Moon Valley suffered significant losses. Large flags stand tall throughout the valley, with different words and patterns engraved on them, which should represent different sects and families. The people under the banner are crowded and bustling. According to the information learned by Lu Yi, the Haotian alliance is an extremely large organization, with a wide variety of sects and families, countless in size, condensed into such a whole. The power seen in front of us is only the tip of the iceberg of the Haotian alliance. The structure of Wanmo Ridge, which is opposite to Haotian alliance, is also the same. Upon regaining his freedom, Lu Yi was in a happy mood and found everything new. He was urged several times by the young cultivator leading the way ahead. Walking to a corner of the valley, there were also many people gathered here, but these people couldn't compare to the bright and energetic cultivators that Lu Yi saw along the way. Most of them were disheveled, yellow-skinned, and a few were lost, especially some beautiful young women. The disheveled and ashen were all mining slaves who had worked on the mine veins, working hard all year round and suffering from malnutrition, making them look like refugees on the run. Not all those captured by the people of Evil Moon Valley will be turned into mining slaves, and there are also some beautiful women whose experiences are generally more tragic. Now that the mining veins are captured, they are rescued and their tragic experiences are destined to be indelible. Upon seeing this group of people, Lu Yi immediately understood that they were all those who had been oppressed and enslaved by the Evil Moon Valley and now regained their freedom. For some reason, they were gathered together. In front of this group of people, there is also a tabletop. Behind the tabletop, there is a chubby monk who looks young and is leaning against a chair, holding his arms and dozing off. The young cultivator who led Landing Yi approached and lightly tapped in front of the table. The chubby cultivator was so excited that he almost didn't fall off the chair. After seeing the person in front of him clearly, he patted his chest and said, "You kid, you really scared me to death." The young cultivator was speechless and whispered, "Senior brother Pang, although registering is a leisurely task, you can't do this either. If you ask the adults in the league to see." Before he could finish speaking, the chubby cultivator waved his hand impatiently and said, "I understand. I understand. Every day, I chatter like a woman." After a pause, he asked, "What's up?" The young cultivator revealed Lu Ye's background and said, "Register and verify your identity." The chubby cultivator was originally so overweight that his eyes were almost invisible due to the fat on his face. However, when he saw Lu Yi, his small eyes suddenly opened and focused on the storage bag around her waist. "Thank you to the leader who swept across the world for giving me a reward. Tianyada is preparing a new book and I don't know when it will be released. Wishing you a great success." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Identification. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Identification. The chubby cultivator sitting behind the table took out a jade slip the size of a palm from his storage bag, looked up at Lu Yi, and said, "Name, origin, and cultivation level." Lu Yi answered one by one. The chubby cultivator pondered, "Shen Tian Sex Lu Yi. We have found him, he is indeed there. Lu Yi finally realized that the jade slip in the hands of the chubby cultivator should have recorded some information about the mine, including the origins and identities of the mining slaves. Through this inspection, it can be ensured that no remnants of the evil Moon Valley have infiltrated into it. But that's not right. The chubby cultivator squinted slightly. The jade plate records that Lu Yi is just an ignorant mortal, but you have already opened one, which doesn't match the information, so it's a bit difficult to handle. As he spoke, he kept glancing at the storage bag around Lu Ye's waist with his eyes. Lu Yi chuckled inwardly, realizing that his previous worries were indeed correct. A mining slave carrying a storage bag could easily attract unnecessary covetation. If we follow his previous plan to present this storage bag, it doesn't matter. It's a waste of money and disaster. Anyway, now that we have regained our freedom, we may not be able to find something better in the future when the sky is high and birds fly freely. But with Tang Lao's casual words before, Lu Yi no longer had to fear anything. The old man's good intentions could never be let down. Faced with the questioning of the chubby cultivator, Lu Yi said, "I encountered an injured cultivator from the evil Moon Valley in the mining tunnel, and I killed him. I opened a spiritual opening between life and death." Upon hearing this, the chubby cultivator frowned. If what Lu Yi said was true, it would be quite impressive. Tigers are always tigers, and even if they are injured, they cannot be provoked by goats, let alone killed. He somewhat understood where the storage bag on Lu Ye's waist came from at this moment. The young cultivator who led Landing Yi approached and leaned over to say something in the fat cultivator's ear. The fat cultivator looked surprised and said, "Which old Tang?" The young monk remained silent and only looked at him. The chubby cultivator reacted and coughed lightly, looking at the expression on the landing leaf becoming much kinder. "I see, you have a bit of courage. Well, although your identity is basically confirmed, you still have to go through the process. Follow me," he said, speaking like this, "stand up. Brother Pang, I'll be busy for now." The young cultivator clasped his fists. "Go, go, go." Senior Brother Pang waved his hand. Following the chubby cultivator, Lu Yi walked towards the direction where many mining slaves gathered. As he approached, the chubby cultivator pinched his waist with both hands and took a few breaths before speaking up, "Do you have anyone from Xiantian sect? Stand up and let me take a look." No one answered. Lu Ye's gaze swept over and did not see the faces of the disciples of Xiantian sect. After all, Xiantian sect is a small sect with few disciples. When it was captured by the evil Moon Valley a year ago, many people died, and only more than 20 young people are still alive. Over the past year, there have been many deaths, but in Lu Ye's memory, there should still be 3 or 5 people alive. But at this moment, I didn't see the figures of those 3 or 5 people, so I guess they had encountered something unexpected. He couldn't help feeling a little sad in his heart. Although he didn't have a sense of belonging to the Xiantian sect, he was the only one left in a sect, and it made him realize the cruelty of this world even more. The chubby monk said again, "Does anyone know him?" No one answered yet. Lu Ye's popularity among the mining slaves was not very good. Everyone was pale and skinny, struggling to survive every day. Unfortunately, Lu Yi lived a very moist life and had a wealthy contribution to exchange for qi and blood pills. As a result, other mining slaves naturally did not have a good impression of him. The same unfortunate experience does not make people unite against each other, but rather more likely to breed estrangement and exclusion. Lu Yi saw the Lu brothers in the crowd, who were not dead and were also lucky. However, the Lu brothers did not intend to step forward to prove Lu Ye's identity, they just looked at him gloating. The chubby cultivator couldn't help but glance at Lu Yi, somewhat suspecting whether this guy was actually Lu Yi of the Xiantian sect. As a mining slave, someone should be able to prove his identity. Many people used to verify and identify each other in this way before. "I know him, he is the Xiantian sect's Lu Yi." Just as the chubby cultivator was suspicious, a weak voice came out. "Who's talking?" The chubby cultivator turned his gaze back and followed the source of the voice. The crowd actively separated, revealing the speaker. Seeing the person's appearance clearly, Lu Yi was slightly surprised because he had only met them once and had not seen each other for a long time. The speaker was a woman, and compared to the gray-faced mining slaves around her, her clothes, although not particularly bright, were at least neat and clean. The chubby cultivator looked at the woman and asked in a deep voice, "Are you sure he is Xiantian sect's Lu Yi? Think carefully before speaking. Lying in front of me won't bring any good consequences." The woman shrank her neck, but still said firmly, "I can be sure." The chubby cultivator nodded and waved his hand at Lu Yi, saying, "All right, your identity is clear. Go and stay, don't run around." After finishing, he blinked at Lu Yi and said, "Tomorrow is a chance waiting for you. After speaking, turn around and leave." After he left, the oppressive atmosphere was relieved, and it can be seen that these slaves living at the bottom were still very afraid of fat cultivators. After thinking for a moment, Lu Yi took a step towards the woman who had just spoken and approached, saying, "Miss, thank you for your kind words." The woman shook her head and said, "No need, you saved me. At that time, I didn't even have time to thank you." She was talking about something that happened nearly half a year ago. At that time, Lu Yi ran into this woman deep in the mine tunnel, and she was being chased by another mining slave. Lu Yi couldn't bear to watch it anymore, so he gave the culprit a lesson. But since that time, he has never seen this woman again. Lu Yi smiled and said, "So we're even." The woman also smiled, and her tired face regained some vitality. "It's even now. Get to know Xiantian sect's Lu Yi again." "You Xiaodai of the Yu family," said the woman with a charming gift, showcasing the demeanor of a lady from a wealthy family. Lu Yi exclaimed curiously, "Miss Yu, do you know what we're gathering here for? What was the chance that the fat guy mentioned earlier?" Yu Xiaodai reached out and pulled her hair around her ear. The explanation said, "We are all people with clear origins and pure identities, and we have basically not opened our minds. Even if we open our minds, our cultivation level is very low. Evil Moon Valley does not treat us as people and will not cultivate us, but there must be some of us among this group who are suitable for cultivation. The Haotian Alliance has already taken over this place, so we naturally need to make some arrangements. Some of them are suitable for cultivation and have cultivation qualifications, and will be taken away by the sect of the Haotian Alliance." Is this what the fat guy said about luck? Lu Yi suddenly realized. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Opportunities. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Opportunities. Did Brother Lu open his spiritual orifice? Asked Yu Xiaodai. Why do you have such words? Lu Yi retorted without answering. Yu Xiaodai extended her finger to the storage bag on Lu Ye's waist. Lu Yi understood and nodded, "Exactly." Then he asked in reverse, "And you?" Yu Xiaodai lifted one hand, and there was a faint glow blooming in the palm of her hand. She obviously also has a spiritual opening, but Lu Yi is not sure how many openings she is as a cultivator. It's not easy to ask about this, as we are not quite familiar with each other. As both cultivators who have opened spiritual orifices, there are many common topics between the two. Although there are nearly 1,000 people gathered here, there are probably not many who have opened spiritual orifices, and their cultivation levels are extremely low. Those who truly possess cultivation have already been absorbed by the Evil Moon Valley and become disciples of the Evil Moon Valley, and their fate can be imagined at this time. Yu Xiaodai lowered her voice and said, "Tomorrow's opportunities are extremely important and must not be missed. If Brother Lu has any special talents, just show them to your heart's content. This is related to your future." She seems to know something. Lu Yi replied, "I understand. Speaking of which, he doesn't have any special talents. He only has a talent tree that others can't see, but he definitely can't show it." Staying among a group of women was not good after all. After a few words with Yu Xiaodai, Lu Yi said goodbye and left. There were many enslaved people gathered here, and their range of activity was limited. Lu Yi looked around and headed straight towards a corner. The Lu brothers over there were trembling behind the crowd, and their faces turned pale when they saw Lu Yi coming. When Lu Yi stood in front of them, their expressions became even more anxious and uneasy. What do you want? Mr. Lu shouted fiercely and inwardly, constantly aiming towards the direction where the chubby cultivator was, as if seeking help. The answer to him was a fist that constantly enlarged in front of his eyes. With just one punch, Lu Laoda's nose bridge was broken and he fell to the ground in response. Lu Yi kicked Lu Lao in front of him in the stomach, and before he could fall, he grabbed his hair and said, "It seems like you don't recognize me anymore." Lu Lao's face was full of pain, and a golden star was shining in front of him. How could he still answer? Lu Yi let out a cold snort and forcefully threw Lu Lao behind him, causing him to lose 2 of his teeth. Occupying the original position of the Lu brothers, they sat cross-legged and closed their eyes to rest. At present, his first orifice is full, but he cannot find the location to open the second orifice, which makes it difficult for him to continue practicing and avoid wasting the qi and blood pill. In the evening, people from Xiaomeng came to distribute food and bedding. Everyone received some, but Lu Yi was not full. Fortunately, there was also food in Zhuangsheng's storage bag, so he took it out and ate it in large gulps. The others on the side were drooling, but no one dared to step forward and cause trouble. Since Lu Yi taught the Lu brothers a lesson, he has monopolized a large area and saved a lot of trouble. After refining his essence and qi, his appetite grew day by day, and he could enjoy eating the dried animal meat with relish. After a night of silence, on the second day, Lu Yi was full of energy, waiting for the so-called opportunity. It was not until after breakfast that more than 10 cultivators with different attire came to the crowd. The leader was a middle-aged man, standing in front with both hands on his back, scanning around and smiling slightly, saying, "You young people come from different sects and families, have been abducted and enslaved here, and have lived many difficult days. However, these days are coming to an end. The various sects of the Haotian League recruit talented people, and if there are any enlightened individuals or those with cultivation talents, they have the opportunity to worship under each sect. Nian and others have a good grasp of life, and perhaps they can fight side by side in the future, slaying demons and eliminating evil." After speaking, he gently waved his hand. The more than 10 cultivators behind them, dressed differently, took a step forward and the first one reached out and pulled, "You guys, come with me." With this pull, a spiritual force surged out, enveloping nearly 100 people. When everyone walked out, the cultivator led them to the side. The second person is the same. There are about 1,000 enslaved people, which is exactly enough for these 10 cultivators to share. Lu Yi fell into the hands of the last cultivator because he was at the innermost part. As he didn't go far, he arrived at a place where a cultivator in the same attire came to maintain order and lined up the crowd. Lu Yi was in the middle of the team, looking around and seeing that the situation was the same on the side of the slaves who had been taken out before him. He understood and realized that it was necessary to conduct some tests to see if there were any enlightened or suitable cultivators among these enslavements. From the words of the middle-aged cultivator before, it seems that those who have opened their spiritual orifices may have a greater advantage. As for those who have no enlightenment or cultivation talent, they should not be valued. After the queue was formed, the cultivator who led them over took out a table from the storage bag, while he sat behind it and looked up, saying, "Let's start." The first slave walked up to him at his signal. The monk asked, "Have you ever been enlightened?" The slave shook his head and said, "Never." The questioning cultivator pushed the crystal ball he had previously taken out and instructed, "Cover it with both hands." The enslavement was done according to words, but the crystal ball showed no response. The cultivator behind the table shook his head and said, "No cultivation qualifications, next one." The slave suddenly felt a little lost and hurriedly said, "I'm not ready, let me try again." Next. The cultivator waved his sleeve and robe, and the incessant slave was rolled aside, falling to the ground. This scene made all the slaves who were still waiting in line feel anxious, knowing whether their fate could be changed. They just looked at the crystal ball and immediately felt suffocated. Those who are enslaved one by one do not have the qualifications to practice. Until the 13th person placed their hands on the crystal ball that had not responded suddenly lit up with a light blue light. Finally, there's one. The cultivator behind the table smiled and looked up at the slave. Name. The slave blushed with excitement and answered truthfully. The cultivator behind the table took out something in the shape of a jade plaque, and his spiritual power activated it. Soon, the name of the person was revealed on one side of the jade plaque. Hand him the jade plaque and instruct him, keep it carefully. You'll need it later. Now go to the tent over there and find my third senior brother to verify his talent. Yes, thank you, sir. The slave held the jade plaque, as if holding the most precious treasure, and ran towards the back, where a simple tent stood. End of this chapter.